Hey everyone, it's Hayden again, reporting from my brother's room in my parents' house. Just had a weekend of 4 events in 2 days. So we had a plant walk Saturday morning, and then a forage and feast Saturday afternoon and evening, and then a plant walk Sunday morning, and a plant walk yesterday afternoon and evening. Yesterday morning, even though it was raining and downpouring, we had about 16 people come out, even though there are 23 people signed up, so that was a nice showing. And pardon the barking in the background. My parents' dog is a little neurotic. But this week and the next week are Poisonous Plants Week. And we're going to be learning about our toxic botanicals and our poisonous plants, not to scare you and not to make you afraid of picking plants, but like the amanitas from last week, just so that we can know what is out there and be safe about what we're going about doing. One of the best ways to avoid poisoning yourself when you're foraging is to know what you're picking. A lot of these plants, you can ID them, you can figure out what they are, and a lot of our edible plants just know what species you're eating. These plant families can give you general patterns of what to look for to make sure that you really want to be careful around them, but you're not going to hurt yourself by touching these plants. Well, there's going to be one story where that's a little bit of a questionable statement. Yeah, but without further ado, let's get into this. Um, Plants span the spectrum from edible to medicinal to poisonous. Now, on that spectrum, there's edible, there's like really nice foods, a little more bitter, food as medicine, medicine, toxic, botanicals, slow toxins that won't kill you outright but can hurt you over time, and then you kind of fall into your deadly poisonous ones that can hurt you really quickly. Keep in mind that even in our kitchens, we have things that we keep under the sink that you wouldn't want to eat or drink or put on your skin. Raw kidney beans will make you very sick. I've had personal experience with that. Some people, react to different foods in different ways. So even though we're talking about the toxic plants out there, that doesn't make plants any more scary than anything else that we eat. Many poisonous plants taste really bitter or will kind of have a burning sensation in your mouth, so you wouldn't even be able to consume some of these plants. But that being said, it's still good to know about them. Two plants I really want you to be aware of are Cicuta and Conium genuses. These are poison hemlock and water hemlock. So Conium is poison hemlock. Water hemlock is in the Cicuta genus. These are in the carrot plant family. So if you see a plant with feathered leaves and an umbel for a flower, you want to be really certain of your identification because there are poisonous plants in that family. Socrates chose to kill himself, or not chose, he was given the chance of how to die, and he chose to use poison hemlock or conium. And as he was dying, he gave us a description of what it felt like. So at first, this plant works by shutting down your nervous system. And he said that at first his fingers and toes started tingling and then losing sensation. Then his hands and feet, ankles moving up slowly through the limbs, and eventually reaching his chest cavity. And it's assumed that once your body can't cause your muscles to expand and contract, you can't breathe, and then he would die by suffocation. Cicuta, or water hemlock, is native to North America, whereas poison hemlock is native to Europe. Water hemlock causes your nervous system to seize, and people have spasms until they die. So very opposite reactions, but both result in the same end game. Like I said, both in the carrot family. Water hemlock doesn't really look like carrot. It has thicker leaves, but poison hemlock does have feathered leaves like a carrot, and the flowers can look similar, but the stalks on poison hemlock are smooth, whereas carrot is hairy, and the poison hemlock has purple on the stalk, whereas carrot often does, most of the times does not. But that hairiness can help you a long way. Next plant is digitalis or foxglove. Foxglove has cardiac glycosides in it, which are alkyl or glycosides that slow the heart rate and can shut it down. So you can find digitalis as a heart medicine. It's a prescription. I think now they probably synthesize it in a lab, but they originally got that from digitalis, from foxglove. These are often in horticultural settings, and they're pretty easy flowers to identify. They have that big, it's hard to describe with my hands, but the flowers are very apparent, so check out some pictures of them. Gradiola, Thomas listed this in the reading as one of the poisonous plants. I looked it up. I haven't really come across this. I haven't ID'd it personally, but it looks pretty small and finicky. So you would kind of really be desperate to try to even harvest this plant. And best way to avoid this is to know what you're eating, yet again. If you identify this plant and it ends up being Gradiola, don't eat it. Convallaria, lily of the valley. This is more of a horticultural plant. It's coming out to flower right now in Connecticut. Beautiful plant, smells amazing, but again, cardiac glycosides, similar to foxglove, can be really rough on the heart and can kill you that way. So don't eat lily of the valley, but it is a nice smelling plant. Not native to North America, but a lot of people have planted it up. Apocynaceae, the dogbane family. Within this family, you have the milkweeds, the Asclepiases. Milkweeds are an interesting group. They are the host plant for monarch butterfly caterpillars, and two of the species are edible, Asclepias syriaca and Asclepias speciosa. You can boil their young shoots for 15 to 20 minutes in water and drain that off, and it's a really nice food. And if we can use these plants as food and then keep them there throughout the season, you can also provide host habitat for monarch butterflies. The milkweeds are very uncommon now because of better weed management in agriculture, and also monarchs are running into trouble in their winter range in Mexico because a lot of avocado farms and illegal foresting are taking out a lot of the, I think they are firs. So that's some sort of conifer that they just en masse come to. But with that illegal harvesting, it thins out those woods, changes the temperature, changes the microclimate, and we have a loss of habitat. The other group of Apocynaceae is Apocynon, or dogbane, also known as Indian hemp. Dogbane is toxic. You don't want to eat it. It's going to be very bitter as well. But dogbanes are used, they're called Indian hemp because they are used to make a very strong fiber. Vinca or periwinkle is another very common plant in this family. You'll see it as a ground cover with purple flowers. The flowers kind of come out throughout the season, and it doesn't really seem to spread. I think it's too warm up here, or too cold up here for it to go to seed, but where it's planted, it spreads a lot. We have it at my parents' house. If you're in the woods, you can find old home sites, like from colonial era, that because people would share this plant and it grows all over the place. But again, it doesn't spread that far out, but it stays at the home site. So if you find this in the woods, look around. You might be able to find some old basements and things like that. And then because of that, you can find plants that Puritans and colonists had planted. So we were in the woods the other day and we found a bunch of gooseberries, apparently in Shindagan Hollow. They had been sharing a lot of gooseberries, some really old daffodils. So it can be really interesting to look in those areas. Veratrum viridae, the best name ever, is false hellebore. It is a toxic plant, can be really good as a nervous system depressant. And the only time I know of somebody almost harming themselves was one of my friends, Doug Elliott, this amazing storyteller. One of his friends was wild harvesting this plant. Because it's a nervous system depressant, it can be used as a low-dose botanical. But he was out in the mountains harvesting this plant and pulling it and chopping it on his jeans. And as he was chopping it, the liquid from the plant was getting onto his jeans and soaking his jeans. And then because it was soaking his jeans, it was soaking into his skin. So he slowly started to notice that his heart rate was really lowering and he was getting pretty tired. And he's out in the middle of the woods and just has his truck. So he finally gets himself back to his car, but he can't lift himself up into the car. And if you have any younger children around, plug their ears. So he had to figure out how to get his heart rate up, how to get his blood pressure up so he could actually get himself into the car and get himself to safety. So he thought of the only way that he can really get his heart rate going. So he unzipped his pants and went forth from there and was able to get his heart rate up enough to at least get himself in the car so he could drive to safety. So that's the only time I've heard of somebody really hurting themselves with this plant. Again, I think it's one of those that is really, really funky flavor. It might have a lot of oxalate crystals as well. So similar to skunk cabbage, where if you don't prepare it right, it would feel like you're eating shards of glass. So, also, some people, maybe you can mistake it for ramps, but it has very prominent veins. It's a brighter green. It's a beautiful, beautiful. It's one of my favorite plants because it's so starkly green in the spring. But toxic, so you wouldn't want to eat it. Ranunculaceae, the buttercup family. These can look similar to rose family plants. They will taste bitter though because many of them are toxic or medicinal. There's a small number that are edible, like marsh marigold and lesser celandine before it flowers. You can separate it from the rose family because of how its seed heads look like, and also because where the leaf attaches to the stalk. In the, I'm gonna have to double check it. In the rose family, there are little stipules, so little smaller leaves coming out right where the leaf attaches to the stalk, whereas buttercups do not have that. But yeah, you'll start to get an eye for the distinction between buttercup and rose family plants. The leaves do look different, and the flowers do look a little bit different. Nymphaceae, these are your water lilies. The roots and seeds are edible, but there's mixed reports about people feeling ill with their improper preparation, or just kind of maybe they're not getting the right species. There is definitely a cooking process for the root. The seeds can be harvested a lot, so it could be really good potential for creating food in wet habitats. I would love to look at this further. My herbal teacher, Matthew Wood, says one of the Native American, or at least his what he's gathered from different Native American groups, is that you never touch steel to water lily. So maybe there's some reaction when the steel contacts water lily that creates some sort of compound. I have no basis for that, but that is one of their practices, or at least the way Matt Wood portrays it. Aesculus soapberry family. This includes the maples. The maples were more recently put into this family. Maples are edible, young leaves, young seeds. You tap sugar maples for sap. Box elder, which is a maple as well, actually apparently produces as much sugar as sugar maples. And as climate change pushes our sugar maples way out of whack, perhaps box elder could be a syrup source. I know there's an article in the New York Times today talking about the threat of global warming to maple syrup production. But within this family, there are the buckeyes, or horse chestnuts. And horse chestnuts are toxic. They have really high level of saponins, or soapy compounds. You probably wouldn't be able to eat many of these because they would probably taste soapy and very bitter. But the nuts can look like chestnuts, hence the name horse chestnut. I remember when I was younger, I used to collect these because they're so beautiful. So on my way back from the bus stop, I would come back with a backpack full of horse chestnut seeds. They're beautiful, glossy, shiny. The seed casing can look like chestnut, but it's more spiky instead of fuzzy. And then the leaves on horse chestnut are palmate, whereas the leaves on chestnut are not palmate. They're single leaves that come off that are toothed. And that is a rough overview of some of the poisonous plants for this week. If you have any questions, let me know. Post them on the forum. It's a lot of reading, but it's really worth knowing about these plants. And if we know about our toxins, we can learn more about medicine. So this is a good thing to know and to keep in mind when you're out there harvesting. Again, not many plants are poisonous just to the touch, except for poison ivy and maybe some of the carrot family plants. So, still feel free to look at these, but be careful when harvesting. Alrighty, I will post some more videos later once my brain recovers from this weekend. But yeah, if you have any questions, be in contact.